AD 29, and Jesus walks on water. I got to tell you, I can actually walk on water, and have a picture at the end of this video to prove it to you that I can walk on water. And so I hope you'll stay tuned to the very end and see the picture of me walking on water, because I actually did that. But this particular event is found in 3 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, and John. And we can see this event very clearly in the most detail in Matthew 14. You'll also see it in Mark 6, and then finally in John 6. And there is one part that may perplex you, and we'll come back to that at the end of the video as well. The disciples have been with Jesus in Bethsaida, and in Bethsaida they have fed the 5,000, and now Jesus sends away the multitude, and he tells his disciples to go on and head across the Sea of Galilee again. And in Mark it tells us that they're going to Bethsaida. And in John it says they're going to Capernaum. And so we'll come back to that, what appears to be a discrepancy but isn't. And as Jesus is watching them strain at the oars, which is quite interesting because it tells us that they're out several stadias, S-T-A-D-I-A, which is about 200 yards or 2 football lengths. They're out several of those. I calculated, if they're out several of those, that they were someplace between 3 and 4 miles out, and that agrees pretty much with what John says, which would be about halfway across the Sea of Galilee, since the Sea of Galilee is approximately 7 miles wide and 14 miles long, and is 130 feet deep. So they're out, as Mark says, in the midst of the sea. So they're someplace out there close to the middle. They're battling the wind and the waves, and it tells us that these are strong winds contrary to the direction in which they're trying to go. And it's the 4th watch being 3 to 6 a.m. So it's dark. Unless there was a full moon, it's probably very dark. And yet Jesus can see out into the water 3 to 4 miles and see them straining at the oars. Well, we know that God can do whatever he wants to do, and he certainly can do that. He can have them, in Jesus' mind, very clearly straining at the oars. And it says Jesus came to them walking on the water. Verse 25 of Matthew 14. And intending to pass by them, according to Mark, verse 48. However, as they see him approaching, they think that it's a ghost, and they have a great deal of fear, and they cry out in fear. And Jesus says something that he said almost 20 times, is recorded in the New Testament. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. And as he's approaching the boat, Peter cries out to Jesus. Now, the Peter crying out to Jesus is only found in Matthew. It is not found in Mark or John. And Jesus, and saying to Jesus, command me to come to you, is not found in the other 2 Gospels. And Peter getting out of the boat and walking towards Jesus is not found in the other 2 Gospels, only in Matthew. And a severe wind and water splashing around Peter's feet, he takes his eyes off Jesus, and he begins to sink, and he yells out, "Save me." None of this is found in the other 2 Gospels, but is found here very clearly in Matthew. Jesus stretches out his hand, takes hold of Peter before Peter goes under, and he says, "Ye of little faith, why did you doubt?" Why did you doubt? And it tells us next that they're back in the boat and the wind stopped. And it tells us that when they got back in the boat, they were instantly, according to the Gospel of John, to the other shore, to the shore where Capernaum is. And we see that the disciples had to be astonished by all that went on. Now, we got a couple of things that we want to deal with here. The first one is the fact that the boat was immediately on the other shore. There's no time lost when Jesus is with you. They may have been straining at the oars before, but they immediately got to the other shore. Peter had the courage to get out of the boat. The other disciples didn't. So don't be too hard on Peter. A lot of us want to stay safe in the boat. And Peter at least had courage enough to get out and to start to walk on water. But he made a terrible mistake, and that's a mistake that many of us can make, which is taking his eyes off Jesus. We want to be sure, especially when we're in the midst of a difficult situation, to keep our eyes on Jesus. But he had sense enough to call out to Jesus, and knowing who to go to when he was sinking. Many times we're sinking in our problems and difficulties, and we don't have sense enough to call out to him. But he's always there to reach out with his arm and say, "Do not be afraid." And we certainly see that as we look at this story, that we have to be a little troubled by the fact that in John it says they were going to Capernaum, and in Mark it says they were going to Bethsaida. Now, let me suggest to you that in the United States of America, there are several Dover cities or towns. In the world, there are a couple of Veronas, because I was born in Verona, New Jersey, but there's also a Verona, Italy. And many commentators believe that near Capernaum, very close to Capernaum, there was another Bethsaida. Therefore, no conflict. They were going across the Sea of Galilee to the general area of Capernaum, but to another town known by the same name as the one on the western shore, northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee. It's quite clear that there is no real argument amongst the Gospels in the fact that they had been ministering, feeding the 5,000 in Bethsaida, and that they were going across the sea, which meant in the general direction of Capernaum. So it's not something to say, well, the Bible's not true, it's full of errors. We don't know that there's any error at all here. They may well have been going across the sea to an area close to Capernaum named Bethsaida, and maybe deliberately so that they wouldn't have the multitudes waiting that they might at Capernaum. Nevertheless, we find a miraculous story of Jesus walking on water, Peter having courage enough to get out of the boat. Sometimes we don't have the courage to get out of the boat, and walking on water, and only when he took his eyes off Jesus did he get into any kind of trouble. And that's the only time we get into real trouble, is when we take our eyes off Jesus. So we have a wonderful event here which teaches us many truths that we need to remember. You'll enjoy looking through and adding the different additional information from the two Gospels that complement Matthew's account in Matthew 14. You'll find them in Mark 6, beginning at verse 45, and in John 6, beginning at verse 15. Now don't forget to watch from the Pastor Pete walking on water at the end of this video. And remember, the Bible does not contradict itself, and it is not filled with errors. There's a very good explanation. These scriptures don't say that Jesus was stepping on rocks. Remember, the Sea of Galilee is 130 feet deep, and remember that they were out in the midst of the sea, probably 2 to 3 to 4 miles out at sea, and that's where Jesus was walking, not on rocks. So don't let the liberals try to explain away the miracles of walking on water. Take this scripture as a true event in history, with Jesus and Peter both having walked on water. Now, don't forget to watch for the picture at the end. God bless you and have a great day.